Good evening, everyone. I'm Scott Thuman. Welcome to our special hour-long coverage tonight. America, State of Affairs. There is no shortage of serious subject matter to delve into and hopefully move the conversation forward. We plan to do that tonight, and here are just a few of the topics we plan to tackle. In the wake of that tragic church shooting in South Carolina,
as Americans, we insist that nobody should be targeted because of who they are or what they look like.
the conversation focuses not just on guns or hate, but also on a flag.
It's time to move the flag from the Capitol grounds.
It needs to come down. It needs to go to the museum.
And that debate extending to store shelves. Retailers like Walmart now refusing to sell the stars and bars, to the dismay of some.
It does show a part of our history. It's a Southern company. It's kind of a slap in your own face to pull everything out that's anything Southern pride.
A waiting game outside the Supreme Court. Will gay marriage be legal nationwide? Will Obamacare take a major hit? The clock also ticking loudly over an Iran nuclear deal with just days to a deadline. And across the border, even less certainty. ISIL's spread reaches new levels. 3 million Iraqis now displaced.
There's nothing left. Our home is just a pile of dust.
But as daunting as all these challenges seem, there is a mad rush for the job to fix them, as another politician throws his hat into the ring.
I am governor of the great state of Louisiana, and I am running for president of the greatest country in the world, the United States of America.
We will begin, though, tonight with the pressing matter that at this moment is under the most scrutiny. It was just a week ago tonight, 9 people were shot and killed during Bible study at the historic Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Charleston, South Carolina. Dylan Roof, who admitted to the massacre, says he wanted to start a race war. In the days that have followed, many issues have been reignited, like gun control.
I refuse to act as if this is the new normal, or to pretend that it's simply sufficient to grieve, and that any mention of us doing something to stop it is somehow politicizing the problem.
I do have an issue that the knee-jerk is from the left is always, we're going to take people's guns away from them.
It is insane, the number of guns and the ease of getting guns in America.
There's something terribly wrong, but it isn't going to be fixed by your government.
Another issue, flying of the Confederate battle flag and its appearance on license plates and state emblems in the South have come back to the forefront. Many are calling for change. Others holding don't want a knee-jerk reaction, rather, much like in the gun control battle. And South Carolina's race issues are hardly insular, nor easily fixed. Each state across the country tonight being forced to look at its own laws, its own race relations, and what should be considered heritage and what is hate. Joining us now, South Carolina State Senator Marlin Kimpson, who represents Charleston and Dorchester counties in the Palmetto State. State Senator, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I know you made a speech on the Senate floor yesterday calling for the state flag to be taken down. My question for you is, where are you in that process, and would you consider any of this that's going on right now to be kind of knee-jerk reaction?
Well, let me take your second question first. This issue has been discussed for more than a decade. In fact, when the flag was raised in the early 60s, there was a growing body and number of people who thought it was definitely in defiance of the civil rights movement. In the year 2000, the flag came off the State House dome and was put up in front of the State House. There have been a lot of people, including myself, really frustrated that the flag flies in front of the State House. So this is certainly not knee-jerk. There have been a lot of public discourse, substantive arguments pro removing the flag, and we intend to do it in South Carolina.
To what degree, though, do you believe that this helps, but certainly doesn't heal? I mean, I've heard your interviews in the prior, and you've talked about the word movement, that this has to be something greater than just about a flag.
Well, listen, we are creating a movement, as you can see. You mentioned Walmart and a number of other stores. Commerce is coming on board. We got state agencies who've issued statements today. Alabama's governor took down the flag. Mississippi's Speaker of the House has made statements. The governor of Virginia. Listen, the South is different now. It is 2015. We're in the 21st century. People of goodwill and prominent elected officials who are following the will of the people are not listening to that rhetoric anymore. We're moving forward. We're going to have a substantive dialogue, but I want to be clear to you also that it's not just about this symbol. We got to have an economic agenda for the empowerment of people who have been left behind after we get over this conversation and move forward. The other thing I want to point out is that I heard your preamble. Gun control is really an issue. As you know, states can exercise police power to restrict the Second Amendment right. There's definitely, the president is right, there's definitely a correlation between the number of guns on the street and the number of deaths. And we want to do something about that in South Carolina. I've looked at the law. The federal law is a lot more restrictive than our state laws. And so we're going to seriously analyze those issues when we get back to the General Assembly. Gun mania in South Carolina will be under attack.
I think what I'm trying to get at here, Senator, is what tangible differences can really be made, though? I mean, a lot of this is theoretical, and a lot of it is in mindset. Yes, there would be a lot of people who believe that it would just be nice to see that progression, at least they believe would be kind of a modern-day civil rights progression, to do away with symbols that they believe inspire hate. But what do you do that tangibly makes a difference? Gun control is something that would be in the hands of the United States Congress for the most part. What can you in South Carolina do to kind of change the course of what's happening?
Well, we do have police powers in the state to regulate guns, so it's not entirely a congressional issue. But what I mentioned, listen, the flag is divisive, and yeah, although it's a symbol, people are divided. It sets our citizens back. So it is tangible in the way that people, particularly African Americans, are hurt every day when they look at it. But beyond that, tangible, we want to deliver an economic agenda to include educating all children. You shouldn't be educated based on your zip code in South Carolina. We want to also make sure that all citizens who have historically been not participating in the economic engine, particularly here in Charleston, we have multi-billion-dollar projects. And so I think we are going to have a serious dialogue on race in the aftermath of this Charleston massacre. The families have set the tone for a big debate across this country on a real, substantive, tangible discussion about race relations and symbols that divide us, and we want to move forward.
Certainly no easy task. We wish you the best of luck. State Senator Marlin Kimpson, thank you so much for your time tonight. We have, meanwhile, received a lot of feedback on Facebook when it comes to the Confederate flag. Derek Wilcox wrote in part, quote, "The flag itself will always be available and legal to own and display on an individual basis. However, it has no place on local, state, or federal property." John Woodward tells us, though, when they removed every last trace of the Confederate flag from the world and people are still killing one another like this current tragedy, what will the next thing be that needs to be removed? I don't own one of these, but I think that in order to fix the problem, the solution needs to be address the problem. Otherwise, that problem still exists. Throughout the special, you can comment on our WJLA TV Facebook page or tweet using the hashtag #YourVoice, Well, that, of course, leads us to a look at today's somber events in Columbia, South Carolina. Reporter Bill Burr of our affiliate WCIV has the latest.
It's important to just say thank you. Thank you to the senator for serving us.
Through the streets of Columbia to the steps of the state capitol, hundreds of people stood in sultry conditions, waiting to see Clementa Pinckney one last time.
It says a lot about what he was trying to do for us as a people and for the country. So this is the least that I can do.
I'm paying my respects to a fallen AME minister also. I'm a Presbyterian minister, and I knew Clementa Pinckney.
Inside the Capitol Rotunda, a public viewing for a public servant who was killed serving those he loved. The State House carries the people's business, but on this day, it holds their sorrow and a leader they respected.
When you see him there, it brings it on home. He really is, he really is dead. It's just unbelievable. No, I did not know him personally, but I've been a lifelong AME, so he's my brother in Christ.
A family of South Carolinians connected by grief.
Being here, I wouldn't be anywhere else in South Carolina than right here today.
The Capitol grounds here in Columbia are returning to normal tonight. For most of the day, it was crowded with people from across the state who simply said they felt the need to do something as Charleston prepares to bury its dead. Scott, back to you.
Bill, thanks for that report. We're just kind of curious here, if you can pull back the curtain a tiny bit and tell us what's really happening there as far as the overall tone. We see a lot of these overt displays of unity, everyone kind of declaring we're on the same page and want to end this hate, and symbols that might be considered hurtful. But is that everything? Are we seeing what's really going on? Is there another side to all of this that's existing that just doesn't get the attention?
Well, I'm not sure if you're reporting it in Washington, D.C., Scott, but I know that in Charleston there have been some acts of vandalism on some Confederate monuments and some Confederate plaques in some of the historical parts in downtown Charleston. Police are investigating those. As of right now here in Columbia, of our state capital, South Carolina, things appear to be relatively calm. Yesterday there was a rally here to bring the Confederate flag down from its monument here on the State House grounds, and while there were some shouting matches, it certainly did not turn physical. So there are some bits and pieces that you may not be seeing in Washington, D.C., but for the most part, though, it is peaceful.
Anything surprise you that you're seeing, Bill?
Oh, I lived in South Carolina for most of my career, probably about 15 years or so, and I haven't seen this type of unity before. It's a very great, warming and state filled with lots of hospitality. But to go through an event like this, I do see a lot of people coming together, despite the differences with people that want the flag brought down and the flag to stay up. I think for the most part, though, people are coming together.
Bill Burr, we appreciate your reports live in South Carolina tonight. Thank you so much. Still ahead here on our roundtable, the debate on trade has longtime political allies at odds.
The most progressive trade agreement in American history, and history period.
This is a stale, old debate. It's not entrepreneurial, it's not fresh in its thinking, it's not realistic.
The president and vice president reach across the aisle in hopes of getting fast-track trade authority. What does that mean for you? A lot. Is it a job killer, as some critics claim, or will it make what you buy from cars to groceries more affordable? A pivotal vote today from the Senate. We'll also talk to members on the House side about America's state of affairs. And still ahead in the rundown, our panel discussion. Topics tonight include the U.S.-Israel relations, the Iran nuclear deal, that deadline just days away, ISIL and al-Qaeda fighting for supremacy in the Middle East, and the growing field of presidential hopefuls for 2016. We'll be right back. So today, major developments on the Hill, never a dull moment up there. The president and Nancy Pelosi, typically very close allies, but politics makes strange bedfellows, and the White House having to align itself with Republicans on the big trade agreement. Here, the president and Nancy Pelosi.
And one of the things we should be doing, for example, is rewriting the rules of global trade to benefit American workers and American businesses. I think we should write those rules before China does.
We all know we live in a global economy, that globalization, and that goes beyond trade, can have a very weakening impact on wages in our own country, and we want to strengthen the hand of American workers, grow their paychecks.
Late today, the U.S. Senate passed that controversial and complex trade bill, which paves the way for some new authority with the president, essentially opens up the idea of trillions of dollars in new deals between the U.S. and Pacific Rim nations, but critics say it comes at a cost, giving this president as well as future presidents the ability to present massive trade deals to Congress for a strictly up or down vote, no power to amend those agreements. It is one of several tough topics we discussed just a few hours ago with Republican Scott Perry of Pennsylvania and Donna Edwards of Maryland. We start, though, talking about issues that are prominent today, like what happened in South Carolina. Let's begin by talking about an issue that's in the forefront of many of our minds right now, and that's what's happening in South Carolina as we watch yet another memorial service underway today. My question for you is this. Obviously, it's reignited this debate over whether or not the Confederate flag should be prominent, but also other symbols that pay tribute to the Confederacy, whether they're statues or street names. Do you think we need to be considering taking down or removing other names and measures like that?
Well, I think certainly it should be a topic of discussion, should be a topic for debate. This seems to be an issue that should maybe wait for another day so that emotions aren't running so high and we can address the symbology and what it means to many people on both sides of the discussion. And I wonder if it's hypercharged based on emotions today.
We asked the same of Congresswoman Donna Edwards.
Here in the halls of Congress, there are statues of heroes, so-called heroes of the Confederacy. I think it is time, it's 2015, and it really is time to remove these symbols of hate. And the fact is that if you talk to the American people and you look at the good people of Charleston who showed up, every race, color, creed that you can imagine, standing shoulder to shoulder, mourning those 9 lives that were lost and saying, you know what, we can do better in the 21st century, and maybe the first start to that is taking down the symbols of the Confederacy.
Senator Reid has suggested that perhaps it's time to take up gun control measures again.
Well, my feeling is the same as the majority of Americans, red states, blue states, Republicans, Democrats, and independents, and that is that we can have sensible gun safety regulations, including strengthened background checks to make sure that people who would do harm to other people don't get to possess or purchase a weapon.
And I would also say, how come no one's talking about mental health issues in this discussion? Why can that never be part of the discussion? Why does it always have to be abridging law-abiding citizens' rights as the only solution? Where's the mental health discussion? Obviously, this individual had issues, and they remain unaddressed, and we're not even having the discussion. That's a public policy issue that also should be addressed and debated.
Congresswoman, we could have a ruling as early as tomorrow from the Supreme Court on the Affordable Care Act and whether or not federal subsidies should be taken away from perhaps millions of people, and that's going to affect those in every single state regardless of what their state exchange is. What would you, as a member of Congress, be doing to try and remedy any losses or effects people may feel after this?
The onus is on the Republican Party, on House and Senate Republicans. If the Supreme Court acts to strike down these subsidies, you figure out a substitute for millions of people to have health care. That will be the responsibility of the Republican Party. Democrats have met our responsibility by making sure that millions of people have affordable health care.
Well, how convenient is it that not one member of the GOP voted for it, but yet somehow it's on the onus of the GOP to fix what the GOP has been saying since before the law was passed, before the bill was passed, as it's been rolled out continuously, that it is flawed and unsustainable. But somehow now the talking point is that it's the GOP's problem. It is not the GOP's problem. It's not the GOP's issue. from a political context. Certainly as members of Congress, as a member of the government, it's incumbent upon us, it's our duty to try and do the best we can for our citizenry regarding public policy. But this is clearly and completely in the Democrat wheelhouse. They're the ones that supported this. They're the ones that, with their president, that told America that this was going to be good for them and this was the best policy that they could come up with when they controlled the White House, the House of Representatives, and the Senate.
All right, let's switch gears here briefly. There was yet another House oversight hearing about the data breach. We're talking about the Office of Personnel Management. Millions of Americans, some current federal employees, others who are former, and now we believe maybe even some relatives or contacts of theirs. What is your level of frustration with the fact that our own government cannot protect people's identities, their sensitive information, and what in the world can you do about it?
I come from a district, and we're in a state that has hundreds of thousands of federal workers and former federal workers, retirees, whose data may be in jeopardy and in the hands of who knows whom, doing great harm to them, both in the commercial sector, but also in terms of our national security. And so we've got to get this right. We have tremendous resources to be able to employ to encrypt the data the way that we need to, and the Office of Personnel Management has a responsibility to protect this data.
What's your level of frustration on this, and what can Congress do?
If the government can't get this right with everything that the citizens pay into in their taxes and all the systems and all the smart people we have, what does that say about every bit of our data, and also very secure and classified data at the highest levels? And we are right to be concerned. And of course then the frustration is, living in a free society, how do we fix this and maintain our privacy and those type of issues? It is a vexing problem that is frustrating. The government needs to take the lead and stand for something, but not necessarily going out and punish private companies that don't want to have their data breached any more than anybody else. Nobody wishes that it would happen to them. They're doing the best they can in most cases. We need to be incentivizing collaboration and working together with private entities to try and secure our systems and safeguard our privacy across the spectrum.
And as if Congress doesn't already have its hands full, there is that long-anticipated work to try and strike a deal with Iran to keep it from getting nuclear weapons in exchange for major sanctions relief. The White House knows that is not an easy sell, and in fact is going to have to do a lot of arm twisting, not to mention the fact that they still have to finalize the deal as time is ticking away.
Will there be differences of opinion as there certain aspects of this are implemented that may require additional negotiations? Yes. That's going to keep our diplomats employed here. But this is an effort to reach a final agreement.
Can that be done over the next 6 days? Just one of many topics we'll be discussing with plenty of insight from the experts joining me here in the studio, including former head of the CIA with his insight. Plenty of people we hope you will stick around to hear from as we continue America State of Affairs.